So can the Vice President, Kamala Harris, the President of the Senate, refuse to certify the vote on January 6th should Donald Trump be successful? That's the question that dozens and dozens of you have been asking me to address, so let's get into it. So as to not bury the lead, the answer is no. The Vice President, the President of the Senate, has no authority to determine what Electoral College votes are counted and which ones aren't. And in fact, when they passed the Electoral Count Reform Act in 2022, they made absolute certainty that the Vice President has no authority. So prior to passage of this bill, there was a little bit of question about what the Vice President could do. One of the first things they did in this piece of legislation is they codified into law that the President of the Senate's role is simply ministerial. And the bill goes on to lay out exactly the role the Vice President has, things like opening the envelopes, handing them to the teller. And one of the most important parts is making sure they properly adjudicate any official challenges to those electoral counts. Now, this is where one of the most important changes came from this piece of legislation. So prior to 2022, the Electoral Count Act required only one member of the House and one member of the Senate to file a formal challenge in writing if they chose to challenge any particular state's electoral college votes. Do you notice what they did? They changed that threshold to 1/5 of each body of the legislature. So that means that in order to file an official objection, it now takes 87 members of the House and 20 members of the Senate to come together in writing to do it. They intentionally made it nearly impossible to actually object to the Electoral College. So folks, don't get distracted with the propaganda coming out about Kamala Harris refusing to certify the vote. She doesn't have a say. But that's not what we should be paying attention to, because they know that won't work. But that doesn't mean that they're just going to sit by. Do you remember this?
So it's going to be up to us on January 6, 2025 to tell the rampaging Trump mobs that he's disqualified. And then we need bodyguards for everybody in Civil War conditions, all because the 9 justices, not all of them, but these justices who have not many cases to look at every year, not that much work to do, a huge staff, great protection, simply do not want to do their job and interpret what the great 14th Amendment means. And I'm glad.
In a moment of hubris, Jamie Raskin might have actually let it slip. So here's what we need to watch for. We need to pay close attention to the language coming out of the Harris campaign. They've been setting the stage over the last week and a half with the language and the rhetoric they're using, calling Donald Trump a fascist, trying to equate him to the party from Germany in the 1930s and 40s. If you start to hear her talking about January 6th again and calling it an insurrection, she might be tipping her hat to where they're going. Call it laying the groundwork. That's what we should be paying attention to.